Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning, MJ. Good morning, Dr. Chris.
Good morning.
Hello, everyone. Today is going to be a really fun one because you're going to be able to see some great results, some before and afters that actually happen pretty instantly within 45 minutes of taking a couple of capsules of TeloYouth. So we're going to be talking about the blood. And the blood is so important. We have to have healthy blood. When our blood is not healthy, it affects everything else in our body. So it's kind of like one of those first dominoes that goes, and then it starts to, affect the organs, the glands, all of the systems, the brain. It's just really incredible to have this healthy, oxygenated, flowing blood. So with that, let's go ahead into the next slide. Dr. Chris.
What do we have here? Well, this is what we're looking at underneath a microscope. And years ago, maybe 40, 50 years at least, this technology's been around for practitioners to access. And even before that, it was brought out in Germany by a Dr. Gunther Enderlein. I think he's the first one that really popularized what we called back then dark field microscopy. And microscopes began to get less expensive, and so practitioners were able to start doing live cell analysis. Because typically in conventional medicine, blood stains are stained. The blood slide is stained, and then just destroys the living dynamics of what you can see in the blood. So we have a very special guest on today, and the opportunity for us to learn so much more about this field of, we call it phase contrast microscopy. This is the different light phases that are able to be used in order to look at the background and get more information from these live cells that we're looking at within the blood. So let me introduce George Moore. He's a clinical microscopist. He works with this technology in his practice and has seen many, many patients and has incredible experience. And now working with TeloYouth, he's able to show the before and afters of what happens with his clients. And George, welcome to our call. So glad you could join us today.
Well, thank you, Dr. Chris and Dr. Tina. It's my pleasure. As Dr. Tina mentioned, she's right. Blood is a primary indicator of our overall health. When we eat food and digest it, the nutrients go into the bloodstream. Even our entire endocrine system, all of our hormones, our glands produce hormones, and they go into the bloodstream. So we can see a lot about the health of a person based on their blood. So in the slide that you have up, we see the ones that are circles, those are red blood cells. And red blood cells in healthy blood should be nicely rounded, just the way we see most of them are, pretty well separated from each other and just floating freely. When we look at this live, we can see the cells typically even move around. They should have their own energy pattern so that as they move, they touch each other, they just bounce off. And in some of the slides that we'll look at later, we can see that there's a center part of the cell called the hemoglobin. That's the part that carries our oxygen, as well as not only oxygen, but our vitamins, minerals, nutrients to the rest of the body. And so blood is one of those things that once you really understand it, can give us amazing information. And you're right, as I started using TeloYouth, because I really am always curious about the supplements I used as well as any other lifestyle, I frequently will look at blood before and after, and I've been able to see some pretty amazing things here.
Well, what's interesting, I think, is for everyone to realize that we hear stories about TeloYouth, and we specifically focus in on, organ health and systems changing. And when you realize that it all starts at the cellular level, and actually even before that, the energy level, because it's the energy that makes the chemistry, and then the chemistry makes the cells and tissue and organs, as Dr. Tina mentioned. So what we're able to do is take a look at how that dynamic plays itself out on this cellular level with the blood. So we're looking at the immune system with the white blood cells, and we're looking at the cardiovascular system, and we're looking at just the overall tissue integrity. So Dr. Tina, do you want to switch to the next slide?
Well, I think I need a little more clarity here. If you could, you did a great job of explaining what these round cells are, but what is this blob up in the upper right? Can you, one of you talk about that just so that everybody can understand what that is?
Go for it, George.
Sure. We also have white blood cells, and then red blood cells outnumber the white blood cells by about 500 to 700 to 1. So we don't see as many, but they typically will move around in the blood serum trying to get rid of, there's certain classes of white blood cells. Some are called macrophages that move through the blood trying to get rid of all the bad things that aren't supposed to be there. So they should also be active and moving through the blood.
And one of the things that really got me interested in this technology is when you're able to see the changes that happen. And we're finding with TeloYouth that those white blood cells actually get more active, and they become more, vibrant, in the sense the light just glows off of them. So you see the energy dynamics. So we'll really emphasize that a little bit more.
Great,
Excellent.
thank you. Thank you for that, guys.
So here we have another slide that shows all those red blood cells stacked up like poker chips. And George, you want to share a little bit of what this aggregation of the cells means to you in your practice?
Certainly. There's really a couple things going on. First of all, you'll see that the cells, just like you say, they're stuck together like a stack of dimes, quarters. You see individual long patterns, and then like on the lower right, there's like a larger clump, which is when they get aggregated, as it mentions. So when that happens, the cells aren't getting the oxygen as you breathe. The blood travels through the lungs to pick up oxygen that we need. So a person can be breathing just fine, but because everything happened at the cellular level, sometimes people wonder why they're fatigued, tired, sometimes shortness of breath. Poor circulation can result. Sometimes people may experience cold hands or feet. Our capillaries are the smallest blood vessels. They're so small, blood has to travel in a single file line to get through. And so when they're all clumped together, that's going to impair circulation. And there's several things that contribute to this. And because I do believe gut health is one of the primary things, optimizing our digestion. And so typically, if a person notices after experiencing some degree of fullness, bloating, gas belching, or just feeling sluggish after a meal, that's one of those indications something didn't go right. And I frequently will see the blood cells look like this right afterwards. And because digestive issues are so pervasive in our society, primarily because of all the convenience foods, as they're called, which are really junk foods, those things really play havoc on our health. And I think Dr. Chris and Dr. Tina, you've done an amazing job of not only talking about the benefits of TeloYouth, but other lifestyle patterns that go right along hand in hand. Another thing that I see is you may notice these little black lines that look like little scratches. Sometimes they look like just very thin spiderweb lines, though it's almost always an indication of some degree of liver congestion. So the liver is another amazing organ that has to perform hundreds of functions, but it also has to filter out toxins, that type of thing. So one of the things that we have found is that with TeloYouth, because of the ingredients, it's one of those things that not only can help undo this situation where it oxygenates the blood. I think in one of our webinars last week, Dr. Tina, you talked about the benefits of even how the aloe vera improves gut function, helps with digestion, elimination. And so it's a great formula that helps address all the things that I'm looking at.
I just get so fascinated how you can see the whole body happening here and the blood. It's all connected. And
You know,
it starts, yeah, it starts with what you mentioned as far as, the red blood cells able to carry the oxygen. And why is that oxygen so critical? I mean, we know how important it is, but it's the energy part. Is where does the mitochondria get its electrons to make energy from? That gets it from oxygen. So if we're energy beings first and we're looking for those electrons to make that charge, that energy within the body, we need the oxygen. So when you see the red blood cells stacked up like this and unable to actually capture the oxygen that we breathe in, it's a futility. It's we don't have the opportunity or the ability to make that energy, transfer that energy throughout the system. So you're looking at the beginning stages of, a serious breakdown. How now you can understand how cardiovascular disease happens. High blood pressure builds up because the body's trying to find a way to accommodate this congestion that's going on, and pressure builds up, and clotting starts to happen, and clots make for more congestion. So it's a ongoing breakdown that goes on. Dr. Tina or George, anything else to add before we go to our live example here?
No, I'm good.
okay. I think you did great.
Okay.
So here we're taking a look at a person's blood, and this is one. It's kind of interesting. I was doing a blood viewing, and so for a person here that I know very well, and I wasn't expecting this, so I only after we saw it did I decide to just grab my cell phone and get some pictures. So here we can see the cells are so tightly clumped that even the individual chains that we saw previously you can't really see. And the reddish color that you see there is because typically cells have so little red pigment in it that it takes about 4 to 5 stacked on top of each other before you see any of the color. And so this is a condition that indicates a person is very prone to things like fatigue, poor focus, concentration. Our brain, even though it's 3% of our body's weight, it actually uses 20% of the oxygen. So people that experience lots of brain fog, trouble remembering, it's amazing how even improving your blood picture can really help improve overall focus, alertness, recall, that type of thing. And just like you mentioned, Dr. Chris, a person that much more likely to experience heart attack, stroke, that type of thing. Once you realized how easy it is to do this, I realized no one really should have to suffer from heart attack or stroke. They just really need the right information. And so this is one of the more extreme examples that you can see of just very poor circulation, very low energy a person would be experiencing when their blood cells are this tightly clumped together.
Thank you for that, George. I think what's exciting about the work you do is that the client gets to see almost immediately what's transpiring and what's changing. And that feedback really, it's incentivizes it. It gives them a real understanding of, wow, if I make these changes, if I start taking something that really helps my body to regenerate and repair, or start making these lifestyle changes, and you can show them, within the office, or else bring them back and let them look at another picture of their blood. The visual makes such an impact. So this is why I think this technology is so powerful. So let's get a quick glimpse of what you see, George, and the next slide.
So here, I had given a person 2 capsules of TeloYouth and just kind of proceeded, I usually do 2 slides, another one's called dry blood. And so then afterwards, I did another finger prick and we took a look at the blood again. And so it was pretty amazing that, of course, all the aggregation, the extreme clump degree that the cells were clumped together, that just was like completely disappeared. And initially we still saw lots of long chains as before, but right before our eyes, we saw all the cells just separating. The cells had this amazing energy where they were almost racing to separate. You talked about how the energy that happens at the cellular level, Dr. Chris, and there's a technical term for that. It's called zeta potential. And typically our blood cells are supposed to have their own cellular energy. So as the blood cells touch, they just bounce off each other. You'll notice that on some of the cells, you'll see like a lighter center, and that whiter or lighter center that you see, that's the hemoglobin. And once that's exposed, that's when your cells can now carry not only oxygen, the nutrients, the hormones your body needs. Many times a person can be taking other supplements or even medications, not getting the benefits of it, because until the cells actually are flowing freely, that just doesn't happen. And so now we see all of the oxygen, which will, of course, now, as I mentioned about the brain, how it actually uses 20% of our oxygen, much better mental clarity, recall, that type of thing. As a matter of fact, when you mentioned the ability to be able to see the before and after, that's the reason that I got into this. Previously, even though I worked, first started off working at a health food store, and people would tell me, "Oh, George, you need to do this and that," and I'd say, that's just their opinion. Once I saw my own blood and saw that, I didn't need anyone to tell me. It's a powerful motivator to be able to see what the different lifestyle changes that we make makes. And so it's an amazing difference within just an hour or less, where you can see dramatic changes taking place.
Okay, I'm going to just jump in real quick here. I'm going to go back to this.
Yes.
Okay, everybody, take a look. Before, 45 minutes later after 2 TeloYouth. Okay, how inspiring is this to make those changes, to have hope, to have focus, have direction, and keep going, right? This is incredible. Again, here's the before, and here's 45 minutes after taking 2 TeloYouth.
So whether you feel it or not, it's working right away. So let's get a quick look.
As you see the video, you see the type of movement that takes place in the cells. And this was just, as I looked around here, we could see the cells just continuing to separate. And so it's that's one of the things I've also noticed with TeloYouth. When you think about it, when our blood is in our body, our heart is pumping, so you expect that movement. But I noticed that even if I keep blood under, on a slide where it's not in our body, the cells continue to move like they have their own energy restored. And so that energy shows that, just for example, the ingredients that we have in TeloYouth, the fertile tissue extract, I found that whenever there's any new life formed, when I say new life, let's say an egg is fertilized, there's a tremendous level of energy that takes place because new life is beginning. And then when you couple that with some of the other ingredients known to help improve energy, it's rather obvious that that energy, that life energy, is transferred to each of our individual cells. And we get to pick up that energy as well as all the other benefits of it. And so that's one of the reasons why many people notice the first day, frequently some degree of benefits. For me, it was better sleep. I do notice that there's some people that they'll take it and say they really don't notice much of anything, but I can show them changes. And so whether they're in tune enough with their body to notice it, there's always some improvement that's going on at the cellular level. And so when you start improving at the cellular level, whether you notice it right away or after a month or 2 or 3, you'll see the physical changes that will later manifest.
That's fantastic. Dr. Tina, on the next slide, we can maybe describe a little bit more. Here's those bright centers, those those centers of the cell that are all lit up that George was talking about, that represents the hemoglobin. And so you see the iron that carries the oxygen, the hemoglobin that carries the oxygen, now is exposed. The surface is exposed in the bloodstream again, where it's not stacked up like the original picture that showed all the clumping and the congestion. And so often, George, in our presentations, we talk about how age and stress, stress specifically causes accelerated aging. You have a technology that you mentioned earlier where you take the slide and you let the blood start to dry, and then you observe its drying patterns as well as the timing. Can you explain a little bit more about the dry blood cell analysis that shows the
Certainly.
aging process?
As a matter of fact, as you dry blood, there's other dynamics that take place. Well, since I don't have a picture of it here, I'll just explain what happens. I dry a series of 8 drops on a second slide. While we're looking at the live one, I just allow that to dry. And as blood dries, there's different patterns that are formed. And so one of the things that it's technically called an oxidative stress test. So oxidation is that process of aging. And when you think about it, since I grew up in the Midwest and, back in the day when cars were actually made of steel, of course, they would use salt on the street and other things, and cars would rust and you would see things rust. So rusting is simply a metal oxidizing. Well, like you mentioned, Dr. Chris, our cells have iron in them. And so when there's either a lack of antioxidants, when we're doing things like not getting enough sleep, it causes that oxidation or an equivalent of our body rusting. And so it's an aging process that takes place. So one of the things that's amazing, we just assumed that as we got older, we would just continue to age. You kind of expect someone who is older to just have wrinkles, to just have maybe poor health, a lot of joint problems and everything else. But one amazing discovery is that we can actually reverse that process. So as you start changing things like your diet and quit eating all the refined and garbage foods and all the different sugars, get whole healthy foods. I believe now that because of the way our farming methods, even if you're eating organic foods, it's known that the nutrient level in foods is maybe 1/3 to 1/4 of what it was just a generation ago, which means that supplementing is really a requirement if you're going to want to be in good health. And so once again, we have a product in TeloYouth where I showed the example of taking 2 capsules of TeloYouth. Well, the 2 capsules would be like a minimum if someone is just using 1 bottle a month. And typically we recommend 4 capsules twice a day as a part of the wellness program. And if you're doing rejuvenation, you would take quite a bit more. And so when you actually rejuvenate, you start seeing that even in the dry blood picture, issues that we have with accumulating heavy metals and chemicals, hormone balance all of a sudden starts improving, and people find that they have the youthful energy and spark that they did. Even reproductive hormones come back into balance. We have hormones, our glands from the top of our head, like where we have the pineal gland. It's able to produce the melatonin that we need to sleep at night, the proper serotonin that we need to have the energy, like during daytime and wake time. We notice that even people that tend to have sluggish thyroid conditions, all of a sudden that improves. Another hormone, of course, is insulin secreted by the pancreas. Blood sugar issues start resolving. So it's amazing that as we, the second slide I do, can actually give an indication of where a person is along that line of aging. And so again, when people follow the right lifestyle intervention, all those conditions can be turned around.
Wow, fantastic. Now everyone can understand a little bit more of why we're getting these incredible testimonies. And we're seeing it right at the core, at the cellular level within the blood itself, and its impact on the white blood cells for the immunity and the red blood cells for the cardiovascular. And everything else that it impacts through the rest of the body. Dr. Tina, anything before we go to the next slide?
No, fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you both. What a great before and after. And thank you, Mary, for being so generous and so kind to share your results with us. So let's talk a little bit about why. Look at this whole body rejuvenation. So when we're talking about changing the blood in 45 minutes, you saw the unbelievable results. But when you look at what happens in 90 days, and George, you're mentioning, just how many you take. I mean, if we're looking at whole body rejuvenation, to give you an idea, this is Hannah. Hannah was 67 when she took this before photo and after photo. These are untouched. There's no makeup. There's nothing. Except for she did have her lips tattooed and her brows, but there's no other makeup on her skin. This is just how naturally she rejuvenated by taking 8 capsules in the morning and 8 before dinner. And this is her after day 90. And at age 67, she was depressed. She had pain. She had digestive issues. She had, her pain was pretty much in her knees and energy. And look at the changes. I mean, just energetically, you can see changes with her, but look at her physically. Really incredible. So you know that her blood had changed dramatically during that 90 days. And how does this happen? It's with the synergy of our ingredients in TeloYouth. We talk about them as super ingredients because we have the aloe vera as the super healer, the chaga as the super protector, creating that melanin and converting sunlight and ionizing radiation into useful energy for us to use. The FTE, that fertilized tissue extract, that is the super rejuvenator and recharger, activating our cells, especially our stem cells, to rejuvenate. And then we have our rhodiola, which is the super relaxer, which helps calm. Who doesn't need calming at this point? And it helps calm the mind, the body, and the emotions, and allows us to adapt to stress, and is very synergistic with our fertilized tissue extract, which has also been proven clinically to help us reduce cortisols. And what does that do? It lowers our stress, because cortisol is our stress marker, our stress hormone. And then our marine collagen is that super glue that holds our body together, which is what we need to have that super information highway connection. Everything needs to communicate, and we need to have that information highway all connected. And that's what our marine collagen does. Not only does it help with that, but it helps build collagen in the body. And that helps reduce wrinkles and scarring as well. And then our L-arginine is a very powerful super builder, and it helps with the release of our growth hormone and other components to keep us young. What's important about our ingredients is that they are synergistic in the right combination, and in the the powerful extraction process that we use means that they're very, very highly concentrated foods. So just to give you an idea, our aloe vera gel extract is not something you can go buy off a shelf. It's 400-to-1 concentrate. You couldn't eat enough aloe vera from your backyard and ingest that and get the super, super highly concentrated aloe vera that we have in our formula. Dr. Chris, what would you like to add about our ingredients?
Well, I'd like to just have the takeaway here from what you shared is just fantastic, is that everyone to realize the difference and the opportunity you have, because in conventional medicine, when you take a drug or even an over-the-counter remedy from the drugstore, it forces the body into doing one thing. So if it's an anti-inflammatory, it turns off the inflammation, but it doesn't allow it to turn on where needed. So here's the thing. When you take foods, concentrated foods that have super capabilities, like Dr. Tina explained, you're seeing modulation. So you have immune modulation and you turn on the inflammation as needed for healing, but then the body knows how to turn it off. And so that's why you don't get chronic inflammation. The central nervous system gets turned on when needed so that you have the energy and vitality during the day, you're awake and bright-eyed, but then it also knows how to turn off at night so that you can go into deep sleep and heal and repair. And then you have the endocrine system that's modulated, and that's the hormones that are released at the appropriate time and the right amount so that you don't, we talk about how be careful with the medications, because when you start TeloYouth, you need to work with your doctor, because if you're on any of these medications that don't have the modulation that we have with natural foods, you can get low blood sugar from taking too much of the medication, or you can get low blood pressure from taking too much of the medication, or the reverse, the opposite, which is just as dangerous as having too much of a symptom versus not enough of a symptom in the body. So that's the takeaway that I'd like everyone to understand. And with the fertilized tissue extract, our foundational component, you have stem cell modulation, you have mitochondrial modulation. So you see the ability to regenerate and to make energy and recharge are all right there in one capsule. And let's wrap it up from there, Dr. Tina.
Great. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you so much, George. We absolutely love when you come on and do your explanation, because you're so good at it. And for everyone on this call, please know that we are here for educational purposes only, and we are not here to prevent or give medical advice or believe me, take any place of your medical doctor. So please know that this is for informational and educational purposes only. So thank you, everyone.